Welcome everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for joining me. If you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to World Affairs in Context on Substack and Patreon for extra content and join our community. U.S. President Trump announced this week that his friend, Indian PM Modi, refuses to buy Russian oil. No more Russian oil, said Trump.
President, thank you so much.
Thank you.
In light of China's export curbs on rare earths, do you view India as a reliable partner going forward? And are you planning to meet Prime Minister Modi in Malaysia? Are you open to talks in terms of
Yeah,
trade?
sure. He's a friend of mine. We have a great relationship. He just said that 2 days ago, as you know. We have a great relationship. No, we were not happy with him buying oil from Russia. So I was not happy that India was buying oil. And he assured me today that they will not be buying oil from Russia. That's a big stop. Now I got to get China to do the same thing. You know, that is relatively easy compared to what we just did over the last week in the Middle East. Middle East was 3,000 years, and we got it done. This is 3 years.
Trump said this not once, but twice this week, and the announcement clearly caught India off guard. Modi, too, was somewhat puzzled to hear of his alleged decision not to purchase Russian oil. And after some back and forth, India publicly contradicted President Trump's claim that Prime Minister Narendra Modi had agreed to hold purchases of Russian oil. What was supposed to be a show of alignment between the two nations, between India and the United States, has instead exposed the friction and the fragility underlying their strategic partnership. It began on Wednesday when President Trump announced from the Oval Office that he had spoken directly with Modi and he had secured what he called a big step, which of course was India's pledge to stop buying oil from Russia. The statement came as part of Trump's broader effort to pressure Russian President Vladimir Putin by cutting off global revenue streams related to crude oil sales. India, which imports roughly 1/3 of its oil from Russia, has long been a key customer despite Western sanctions, and the West doesn't like that. So for Trump, it was, of course, wishful thinking. It was something that he wanted to happen, and he was effectively pressuring Modi by his public announcement, but effectively it turned out to be a bit of an embarrassment for Washington. So less than 24 hours after his first announcement, Trump's claim was openly disputed in New Delhi. Randir Jaiswal, who is the spokesperson for India's Ministry of External Affairs, told reporters that he was unaware of any such conversations between the two leaders.
On the question of whether there was a conversation or a telephone call between Prime Minister Modi and President Trump, I am not aware of any conversation.
Jaiswal also added that while energy discussions with Washington are indeed ongoing, India's policies on oil imports are driven by one overriding goal, which is to protect its domestic consumers from volatility in the global energy market. He said India is a significant importer of oil and gas. Our import policies are guided entirely by the interests of the Indian consumer. Needless to say, his words directly undercut Trump's narrative, suggesting that no such commitment had been made. Now, for observers of the U.S.-India relationship, the mixed messaging was unsurprising. Former diplomats and analysts said that it reflected the two countries' conflicting priorities. Trump, who's very eager to declare a foreign policy win, as we know very well, has been seeking to present India as a willing partner, effectively as an ally in this regard, in his campaign to isolate Russia. And despite the fact that his recent phone conversation with Russian President Vladimir Putin went well, I guess as good as it could have, Trump, of course, still remains on that path. That is a long-term goal. Well, Modi, on the other hand, had built his foreign policy around what India calls strategic autonomy. What does that mean? It means cooperating with great powers when interests align, but never appearing to act under pressure. And in an interview to Politico, India's former ambassador to the United Nations described the episode as classic pressure politics. He said Delhi's vagueness was very deliberate. It was a way to signal cooperation without capitulation. India may adjust volumes quietly, he said, and of course here he's referring to the volumes of crude oil purchases made by India from Russia. But he said it will not be seen as bowing to U.S. demands. The message is very clear: cooperation yes, coercion no. So it is fair to say that Modi is looking for a favor from Trump too, although of course he's very unlikely to cut off Russian energy exports. India's hesitation to be more upfront with Trump may be tied not only to oil itself, but to trade, particularly its hope that Washington will roll back a 25% tariff that Trump imposed earlier this year. The tariff, followed by another 25% levy targeting India's Russian oil purchases, has strained relations between the two countries. Indian officials have privately complained that Washington's punitive measures unfairly single out India, while other major buyers of Russian oil, such as China and Turkey, have faced no similar consequences. Now, the timing of the disagreement is also very sensitive. Trump and Modi are expected to cross paths later this month at a regional summit in Malaysia, so that will be a really interesting opportunity for them to either agree on positive and meaningful path forward or to, make that relationship even worse. For Trump, making high-profile declarations of wins appears to be a modus operandi. It's happened several times before, and every single time we see foreign governments and foreign officials try to do some damage control later by downplaying or disputing Trump's claims. India has been carefully managing its balancing act between the United States and Russia for decades now, and therefore Modi's public alignment with Trump's pressure campaign would be politically very, very risky for him domestically. Russia remains one of India's top defense suppliers and an important energy partner. Modi's government has been careful to frame oil purchases from Russia not as a geopolitical choice, but rather as an economic necessity for a country of 1.4 billion people. So what could be said here? Some behind-the-scenes arrangements between Washington and New Delhi are very possible, and they probably will take place. However, a complete refusal by India to purchase Russian energy resources is highly, highly unlikely. Modi is not going to do it. For the Indian authorities, maintaining independence in choosing their trading partners has been very important, not only for their reputation domestically, but also as part of their broader course towards sovereign development. So today you agreed to give up Russian oil, they think, and tomorrow the United States might propose that you act as a proxy fighter in a war with China. Who wants that? India has no interest in that. It would mean the country's destruction for the sake of someone else's interest. Still, a certain level of relations with America will be maintained, of course, including possibly as a means to contain China. At the same time, the optimal scenario for both, for India and for China, is to resolve their border disputes through a compromise approach and to develop good neighborly relations. In essence, India and the United States are locked in a familiar tug of war. We've seen this many, many times, one between political optics and strategic necessity. Trump wants to showcase a global coalition against Russia, and he wants to show that he's willing to pull that off, while Modi, on the other hand, wants to preserve India's image as an independent power. And neither can afford a public rupture, but neither wants to appear to yield. India may quietly reduce its dependence on Russian crude, of course, but it will do so on its own terms, not as a response to American ultimatums. Trump, meanwhile, may continue to frame any movement from Delhi as a diplomatic win, so it's very important to read between the lines. The tension between Washington's expectations and New Delhi's autonomy is definitely there. It's not going anywhere anywhere anytime soon. Whether that tension leads to compromises in the near future or a more visible clash in the month ahead remains to be seen. What do you think about India's role in Trump's geopolitical games? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for joining me. I hope that you consider supporting my work. Become a subscriber here on YouTube, on Substack, or Patreon. I would love to see you on my alternative platforms. You will find them linked below. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care.